Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, I'm going to be showing you beautiful people how to make a beautiful bowl. So this is kind of going to be a pretty classic and simple form. We're going to be going over a lot of the basics of throwing. I just did a big set, and we're basically going to be throwing, just a pretty simple circular bowl. But we'll be able to cover all the basics, and then subsequent videos we'll be able to get more advanced. So to start, you want to start by centering. This is the first step that basically just allows you to get control of the clay. I always start with downward pressure. I lean my forearms on the splash guard and kind of brace all the muscles in my torso. This technique is all about being stable and also having a sense of where the middle of the wheel is. So basically both my hands I'm pressing with like the heel of my palm and the fingertips of my right hand, and I'm kind of bringing up towards what I believe is the center point of where everything is spinning. And so I just basically squeeze the clay up and bring it down while focusing on those parts of my hand pushing in that direction. So obviously when I'm bringing it down, there's a little bit more pressure from like the top part of my hand, and my ring finger index finger and middle finger are doing a little bit more of the pressing down. And then when I squeeze up, it's a little bit more of the pinky from my right hand, this pinky over here, and this part of my palm. So basically you just want to bring it up and down as many times as it takes, and what you want to end up with is basically just something like this, where it's not really moving around, it's perfectly under control, and it's going to be all on centers for when you open it up. There's a lot of different ways that you can open. My favorite way for clay of this size is just pressing in at a slight angle with my middle finger and my index finger. And I've got my right hand playing a supportive role. My thumb is down here up against the bat, which helps me gauge how deep these fingers can go. And again, I just have my forearms resting on the splash guard. My whole torso is braced. And then I can, from opening, I can not even change my hand position and start squeezing and pulling up, which makes for a nice fluid movement, especially when you're trying to crank these out, and the number you make decides your hourly wage. I like adding a lot of water for the opening stages, and then as I get farther into the process, I'm going to be adding less and less water. When I'm working with smaller amounts of clay, you'll see my left hand pinky outstretched, and that's just to make it so I can more aggressively open it up without distorting the form. But if you're like a beginner or something like that, and you're not really trying to rush through the process and do this in the least number of pulls, then you probably don't have to worry about that. I'll add a little bit more water on the inside, but not the outside, and I'll make sure that I don't have water sitting in the bottom. And again, these forms are all about roundness, so they don't look quite as round now. But once I trim them, they're going to get a lot rounder, and we're going to be doing that in 1 second. But the key is, if you want to trim a round form, you want to make sure that it has a round inside. So many people, when they're trying to throw something that's very spherical, they focus on the outside, but the outside's going to get trimmed. And a lot of times they make it so their foot is too narrow, and they end up having issues where it's going to collapse, and none of that's good. So just focus on the inside shape, and then you can trim the outside shape to match. Two other minor things. I'm going to be chattering this, and I like having, I rib the outside so smooth. I like there being some contrast, so I like adding some throwing lines on the inside, so it looks, there's contrast between the two sides. Also, this is called a throwing stick. It's just a chopstick jabbed into some soft clay at the tip of my wheel. But this allows me to throw a big set of bowls, have them all basically be the same height and width, and I don't have to bring a ruler out. I did use 1.5 pounds of clay, and it's basically 3 3/4 tall and 6 inches wide. If you guys want to follow along with the measurements at home. I'll do a little bit of an undercut right here with my rib. And I would normally suggest slicing it with a wire tool. I don't, because I end up, they end up distorting with the porcelain, which is kind of annoying. Okay, so that's that. And now we're going to trim one. So for trimming is basically the step where, we really get to clean up the bottom of the form. And then we're going to be doing my all-time favorite technique, chattering. Chattering is a delight. So generally speaking, you want to make sure that your piece is relatively soft if you're going to be chattering. Also, if you're going to be doing any handles or anything like that, you want to make sure that you're trimming as soft as possible, and then you want to make sure that it's not going to be drying out on you while you're trimming the other pieces. So if you are going to do a handle, just make sure that you keep it wrapped. And normally I like trimming with a Giffen grip, but for the camera angles and for this being a slightly smoother demo, I'm just going to do it the old school basic way and just take some big lumps of clay and smush them in. When you do this, you want to make sure that when you have the clay, you push the clay into the wheel, not the piece, because if you push it into the clay into the piece, you may dent your wall or move it over, and you really don't want to do that. All right. So like I said, we're going to be trimming this to make it quite a bit rounder. And there's a few little details that I do with my feet that I think are ingenious. And I know a lot of other people don't do them, but some people do. They're the smart ones. Again, so often, I harp on the same things. I have my forearms resting on the splash guard. My hands are touching each other for extra stability. So much of what pottery is about is just being stable. I think when I threw this one, my bat was cockeyed, which sometimes happens. So I'm using one of the super sweet Bison tools. Shout out to them. They make absolutely great tools. And so one of the things that I like doing is, again, and you'll see me take out quite a bit of clay in this area. I needed that clay there when I threw it, but now that I'm done with the throwing, I can take it away. And now for the next thing, I'll take whatever random pointy thing that I can find that I think I can jab in there. A lot of times I'll use this tool, and I'll basically just take it and I'll just curl it up into this space. And this does a couple things. It makes it so that I have something that I can grab onto when I'm glazing it, which makes it a lot easier. It gives me like a little handle to just sort of grab onto. And also, if my glaze is thinking about running, this space acts as a little reservoir that'll catch it, so that you can get away with maybe a little more heavy-handedness with your glaze without it actually running. All right, so I'll look at this and I'll say, this is basically the width that I want it. I could maybe scoot it in a little bit more. The more you scoot it in, the fancier it looks, because it usually means that you have more belly to your piece, so that there's going to be more curve. But you also want this to be a functional piece, so you don't want it to be too narrow. Otherwise, it will tip over too easily. Some people will set up like a rim. Some people will set up a rim directly opposite of them to make it so that they can see their form. But if you're not sure if your form is as round as you want it to be, I would suggest actually just taking a step back away from your wheel so you can look at it from from the side, because it'll give you better perspective. When you're looking at it from top down, you're actually going to be getting a slightly distorted point of view. Always keep that in mind. Whenever I'm trimming this inside space, basically the thing that I'm thinking about is whatever curve that I trimmed along here, I can basically continue that curve into this space, like as if I was going to imagine that the foot wasn't even there. And again, that's basically going off the idea that if I trimmed or if I threw the inside round, then I should be able to trim the outside round also to match it. And we're probably just about done trimming it. Maybe go a little bit more. One nice thing that you can do is just, once you get to this stage, just take your sponge, a little bit of dampness, and just kind of give it a little bit of a buff. If your piece is a little on the drier side and you want to chatter it, which is what I'm going to be doing right now, you can take your sponge and sort of add some moisture to the surface. I would advise, though, just trying to get it so your surface is as smooth as possible. I hope I didn't get any water on my camera. And again, when you have these simple forms with these really, really clean curves, it's a great idea to put some sort of decoration like chattering, because it just goes with the form so well. Okay, so for chattering, I'm just gonna scoot this down where it's being held. And if you are using a Giffen grip, which I would recommend, they are awesome. I would take a little bit of clay and just ring it around the side of your piece anyway, just for a little extra stability. Sometimes things have a habit of flying off the wheel. So chattering is basically just the coolest thing in the world. You just take your tool, you want to put it in at an angle so it's cutting into the clay. You want the wheel going fairly fast. Again, if you can have the clay be a little on the softer side, that's going to be better. And then you want to put some pressure so it cuts in, but you want to be holding at the very, very end so that it can like bounce up and down a lot. So to show you what that looks like, and you can hear it bouncing up and down, and you get this beautiful carved pattern in literally 2 seconds. You put a really, really nice Celadon glaze on it, and you get this beautiful, beautiful pattern. And this is the only reason I was able to pay rent for quite a long time, is because this technique creates something so beautiful, but in such a time-efficient manner. And when you need to pay rent, exactly the kind of technique you need. I would not suggest rubbing all these little flaky things with your hand. You want to do it with a dry brush. You don't really want to blow with your mouth because you may end up spitting. And it only takes like a little wad of saliva to get some of those little burrs to settle in. But a dry brush is like just the trick. You can also wait until it's a lot drier to do it. And that's basically, how I make my bowls. Oh, and just to give you a quick comparison, a little bit of a bonus before I go, just to give you an idea of how much, I end up trimming. It's pretty sizable amount. There's probably almost like ½ an inch on either side. So you do not want to throw your piece to look like this. You want to throw your inside so that it's round, and then you can trim your outside to match it. So that's basically it. I hope you guys liked it. I will definitely do some more, and I'll see you then. Thanks for joining me. Peace.